It wasn't until I went into the industry, in the actual industry, that I learned how the industry did it. I was convinced the industry was down and dirty. I'd heard that over and over. Of course, the industry does make a lot of trash. There's no way around it. But I was really surprised by what I found out. The methods they used in the industry were easier, and they worked. And when you were done, you had something really beautiful. Now, I was management being trained to set up the work for the factories. So because I was not union. And union laws specifically said that if you were management, you could not work on the machines. But I said to my sample makers, please show me how you do it. And they were very pleased that I asked, because there are many pattern makers in the industry, well, they're now called technical designers, who don't know how the industry sews. So I was asking people who were working for me how to show me how they did their work. And this meant that if they showed me, not only would they be in my good graces, of course, but also they would have someone giving them work that set up so that they could do it, because she understood what they would do with the work when it was handed over to them. And as a result, I learned sample making. Several years later, when I retired to raise children, I decided to write these skills down. And that's what these shows that we are giving you are all about. If you also subscribe to my Instagram account, you can see step by step as I make clothes for myself, because I put it up. Now, I want to discuss home sewing patterns, because they're still out there and people are still buying them. But to my amazement, the price has skyrocketed. And I'm going to show you two patterns I just bought this week. They're both faux patterns. Here's one for a coat. Not much fitting with this, all right? This coat pattern was originally $35. They happened to have a very special sale when I walked in, and I got the pattern for $5.99. And let me tell you, I'm not sure it was even worth that amount. I can't believe what's in these patterns. I mean, I'm absolutely dumbfounded. During the First and Second World War, we were at war here in the United States. But the war was not here in the United States, which meant that we began to start manufacturing products for Europe, because Europe was decimated. And the First War and the Second World War, the Allies needed clothing, especially uniforms. So orders were sent out to small manufacturing concerns here in the United States to manufacture clothing. And these were manufacturers who were producing products using low-level engineering procedures. And these manufacturers developed the apparel manufacturing procedures now used globally, including in the Paris houses. And yet, almost nobody knows them, including people working in the industry, because it's line assembly. All right, so why hasn't this been written down? All right, and the problem here is that the people who know it are making very good money, and they have to keep their jobs because they're probably supporting families. Many of them are men. They don't sew in the home anyway, or rarely. So they don't realize how badly this information is needed. And yet, pattern companies and the fashion, or rather the sewing magazines, are run by home sewers, because that's what's out there. The Department of Agriculture started the home ec for the farm women, and back when I was in college, home ec was the big major to take, because you get a job as a farm agent, all right? And this is still out there. But in the meantime, the world's moved on, and this information isn't available. You can go on the net and you can learn how to build an atomic bomb, or at least so I'm told, and you can't learn how to sew. That's unbelievable. Okay, but I'm going to tell you what I find problems with these patterns, okay? I also bought another vote pattern. I bought both of these patterns, by the way, for this video we're doing today. It was also originally priced at $35, and it was priced down to $5.99. All right, I bought the two patterns, and I saved, are you ready for this? $58.02. Two patterns. $58.02 is what I would have had to also pay if I bought them at their original price. And to make matters worse, this one has sizes 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. That's 5 sizes in the pattern that you have to deal with. And this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 patterns in this pattern packet that you have to deal with. Back in the day, you bought a pattern and it was one size. Here's a pattern I bought years ago. We took it out of the plastic bag that I'm keeping it in to keep it safe. This was bought years ago. I don't have a time on this, but I know it had to be in the late 1950s or early 60s. And this is one size. It's a size 12. And that's it. It had one size. Now, it's obvious that the patterns aren't selling it. They wouldn't be putting so many sizes in a package. But $35 for this, and it's full of hassles and aggravations, I can tell you. Not only, that's the case with this too, by the way, but at least you only have one size to deal with. All right, now in previous videos we have made, I have explained how to determine your correct size, and I'm just going to give a slight review. According to these pattern packets, you buy your size by your bust size. Wrong. That is just one of many mistakes in these patterns. And I'm talking about Vogue, which has always been considered to be the cream de la cream of patterns, all right? You don't buy your pattern size by your bust size. You buy it by your chest size measured underneath your bust, because that gives you your bone size. And from there, you add 4 inches, which would give you your bust size, and then you can determine your pattern by that. But you need to really go to the video we made on this and follow through with the instructions on that to get it right. Because if you buy by your bone size, far more of the pattern is going to fit you. The bust is very easy to correct. It's not a difficult fit correction at all. But if you buy it by your bust size, if you're large busted, you bought a pattern that's too big all over, and half of the additional room you need is in the back. And I don't know anybody with bust in the back. And if you have a very small bust, you then wind up with a pattern that's too small. And in both situations, you wind up with almost everything in the pattern packet that's got to be corrected so it fits you. And you don't need all that work. All right, so enough for that, so you understand that. We have put up a lot of videos on my YouTube channel that have been shown on PhillyCam as well, where you can go for this information. And it's there for you, and it's free. And if you're interested and you want to write any comments and tell me what you think, you can add them. And I'm very interested in what you think. I've written a total of 8 books. It's a series that present how the industry drafts and sews. And it's all written so that you can use it in the home with minimal equipment. Just a very, very basic sewing machine. You don't need to buy something that costs $10,000. It's not necessary at all. And it's there for you. So you can use that. And it tells you exactly how the industry does it. And this is exactly the way I sew. As a matter of fact, when I sew for myself, I get out my books, because I don't remember all this stuff. All right, so here's the instructions. There they are. All right. And what I see, first of all, it says double thickness. Fold fabric right sides together. Nobody does this in the industry. Nobody folds it together. Nobody cuts on the fold. In the industry, we have a 4-letter word, fold, F-O-L-D, don't do it. And the reason is, if you cut on the fold, that means that you've got a wedge of fabric there that can increase the width of the garment. If you don't have it on the perfect angle, it can increase the width so that now the side seams are at a different angle to the grain than the side seams in, for instance, the back pieces that might be cut separately because they have a zipper going up and down. There's all kinds of problems with this. If you lay it out flat, you get a tighter cut, you use less fabric. This is something everybody knows in the designing departments and in the fashion industry. You just do not cut on the fold. All right. So here they have these diagrams, and it shows you to cut on the fold. They tell you right together how to fold it together. And without the fold right sides together, fold fabric crosswise, cut fold. I always cut one ply at a time. Now, granted, that's not done in the industry. In mass production, they ply up like this, but nothing's cut on the fold. It's spread out all the way. Very careful to make sure that it's on perfect grain. I've opened this pattern and I'm finding that they have each of the pieces printed in 2 sizes, which is really good. That's a good thing because I know that some of these pattern companies print a whole series of sizes with the different cutting lines on them. So I'm looking here and you can see I've opened the whole pattern up, and I'm looking here at size 8 and size 10. So the big concern is on the fold. You can see how to trace off patterns on another one of our YouTube videos, but I'm just going to show this here, what we do to make sure we get this down tight, because I'm dealing with the business of cutting on the fold, which you never ever want to do. So this is how you deal with it. Now I'm not going to trace the whole pattern off. I'm just going to do a little bit to show you. Take tracing paper, which you can buy at an art supply store, and you should be able to get it in a big city. You might be able to have it shipped to you. You want canary yellow. You don't want to use white because white is opaque. So you do have better results with yellow because it will show through. So the first thing I'm going to do is fold the paper, which you start in the center and fold out so that you get a straight fold. That's very important to do it. You do not want to cut this as they have it here. And you lay it over the fold here so that you have it right on the edge, because when you cut this, you're going to cut this on the open. However, when you do layouts, you want to do your layouts on the fold because it takes more fabric, and that way you have a little ease when you actually are cutting the garment from the fabric. You want to, first of all, correct the patterns, cut a muslin, test it for fit, and then from there do a layout before you ever go to the fabric store. So you know exactly the amount of fabric you need. If you're planning to do an ensemble, you can lay out the patterns for a number of garments. For instance, the jacket, the pants, the slacks, maybe even the blouse, if the fabric you're going to use fabric can use for all 4 of those items. And that way you know exactly how much fabric you need when you go to the fabric store. And it's very helpful. It'll save you a lot of money and a lot of wasted fabric. All right, so this is laid out like this. And first of all, they have 5/8 inch seam allowances on these garments. You do not want to use a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Nobody uses it in the industry. It doesn't make any sense. If you have a straight seam, you might want to have it 3/4, that's high end, or 1/2. 1/2 press is easier than 5/8. The industry by and large uses 1/2 because every fraction of an inch they save, when you multiply it times 1,000 garments, which is the usual cutting, it adds up. But in your case, it's fabric that probably is going to go in the trash can, so using a 3/4 inch seam allowance on straight seams makes more sense, because if you need to alter the garment later, you can. Now, you would only want to use a seam allowance that wide if you're not dealing with a curved seam, because it won't sew well in a curved seam. And all this business of clipping seams, forget it. It's a waste of your time. You want to use a seam allowance of, say, 3/8 around a curved seam where there's stress, for instance, an armhole, and 1/4 around the neck edge where there's no stress, or on collars where there's no stress, because that eliminates all that clipping nonsense. All right, so I'm going to take my transparent ruler, and everybody, you need at least one of these, 2, 3 maybe. All right, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure, I'm going to take off the size, let's see, a size 10 and size 8 and size 10. This is a size 10, and I'm going to reduce this by 1/8 of an inch, and that will make it a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm going to put 1/2 on there so I know, because you want to write notes on everything you do so you know what you're doing. The same would be the neck. The armhole here would be, you take off this, you want this to be 3/8 inch seam allowance, so it's 1/5/8. You want to take off 1/4 as you go around this, and I'm marking this in. Now, we do have a video up on YouTube that shows you how to determine whether or not the notches in the armhole are correct. And I want to warn you right now that it's highly probable that any pattern you buy in the store, the notches in the armholes and sleeve caps will not sew together. And the reason is grading, the machine grading can't do this. Computers can't grade sleeve notches correctly and armholes correctly. You have to walk the sleeve cap around the armhole. And if you're having problems putting your sleeve caps into your armholes, that's why. It's not set up right. You've got to check that. We have that up on YouTube, so check that out so that when you're sewing, you don't have these problems. And you can correct this right away in the pattern as you're tracing it off. You won't have the problem when you hit the sewing machine. The goal here is to get everything set up so that when you cut the fashion fabric, you go to the machine, you sew it together, you put it on, and you wear it. There's no fittings involved. You do not buy a pattern, cut it out in the fashion fabric, and then fit it and correct it, and then go back and take everything apart and correct the garment. That you just don't do, because you wind up with a garment that looks like it's been used and worn. You want something to look new and fresh, and that's how you get it. You get it by starting out with fabric that's cut to make your garment with all the corrections previously removed because of your pattern work. And it may take you a while, but the benefit from this is that you can use these patterns over and over again. Now, this is a long dress, but this could also be I'm going to take this and show you here. Here we go here. This could be, I wouldn't want this flapping here. I think that looks kind of dumb. But I could cut it off to here and it'd be sleeveless for the summer. I could cut it off to here and have a sleeve in it. And it could be a garment for any time of year at all. I might want to add this collar. Actually, I don't care much for this collar. I might put a different collar on than that. It could have short sleeves. I could put a different sleeve in than this. Probably I wouldn't make this long dress, but if I did, there's another problem with this pattern, and I'm going to show you what that is. The problem with that is that in the pattern, oh boy, I can't believe this one. Where is this thing? Give me a second and I'll find it so I can show you what I want to describe with you. Here we go. Where's the layout for this one? I'll find it. I'll find it. Give me a second. Oh. No, show the complete layout. Ah. Here it is. I found it. Here is the back piece, and it's got this kick pleat. The fabric should go all the way up, should be widened all the way up. Because if the kick pleat is cut out here, it's going to hang down, and it's going to hang down below the hemline. That's not going to look right. If this is anchored all the way up into the neck, it's going to look better. Another problem with this is they're telling you how to put in an invisible zipper. I wouldn't use these instructions to put in an invisible zipper. I wrote my own, and I'm not having any problem putting them in at all. But let's see, where's the instructions for that? It's somewhere. By the way, just in case somebody's told you different, you put the zipper in first or as soon as possible when you're making a garment. Don't wait until everything else is sewn together, okay? And here they are doing that first, but they're telling you to use a invisible zipper foot. And I have never been able to use an invisible zipper foot and have it work. It just doesn't work. I have found that the regular zipper foot is the easiest way to put it in, but I have instructions up on YouTube that show you how to do it, and I put in zippers to match with invisible zippers, and I don't have any problem with it because I don't do it this way. Here they're showing you in the instructions to clip out these curves. You don't need to do that. If you got your seam allowances reduced to 3/8 around an armhole, you don't need to do this clipping out. This is ridiculous. It's a waste of your time. All right. And besides, you'll have a more professional garment when you're done. all this cutting out little snips and stuff. This is home sewing, and it's been out of date for over 100 years. Do yourself a favor. Take the time to learn these skills. It'll save you a lot of time in the end, and when you're done, you'll have a garment that you want to wear for a long, long time. When I look in my closet, I have clothes that I have made maybe 30 years ago. They still look brand new because I'm using the methods used in the industry. Now, granted, the industry does make a lot of trash, no question about it. But garments made the way high-end garments are made in the industry, they last and they look great. And this information is up on my YouTube and it's in my books. So that's why I'm telling you about all this, because I'm sick and tired of all this nonsense. It's ridiculous. You should have this information. Why shouldn't you have access to this information? In this case, what I'm doing is I am checking this pattern to see if it's been drafted to the grade rule. And what I'm finding is very positive. I'm glad to say I'm not finding any mistakes, because I have found mistakes over and over and over again in home sewing patterns. I was using home sewing patterns with my students because that's what they wanted to do. So we would all make a blouse from the same blouse pattern, each student choosing the size that fit them best, and then they would grade it to their custom fit. And that's what they were learning in my classes. My classes included design room personnel, and they were learning how to use grading. All right, so anyway, this particular pattern seems to be coming out very well. Now, what I have in front of me here is a stacked graded patterns, and I developed this, took me an entire summer. And I did this for the front and back skirt, front and back bodice, and sleeve, because that's what we need to have to, in other words, develop basic slopers. And a sloper is a pattern from which you draft patterns. And if you have a sloper that fits you, you can then draft any number of styles from those slopers. These are slopers in sizes 2 through 30. I couldn't get sizes, the extreme sizes, the very small sizes and the very large sizes, but I know grading, so I graded them. And this is a stacked grade rule of the front bodice. This is standard sizing. All right, so how well is this pattern graded according to standard sizing? Now, all these slopers have no seam allowances at all. So what I have done is I have marked the actual sewing line for size 8 and size 10 here on this pattern. And I have traced off where this would be for the 8. This would be 5/8. Let's see, it would be 5/8 down would be the actual sewing line from size 8 at the armhole, and it would be 5/8 in from the cutting line here for size 8. And I've marked these lines. So these lines all indicate size 8. This is size 8, and this is size 8. This is size 10, but we'll ignore that because we're dealing with size 8. Let's see if the true bust point, which is here, this is very, very important because this determines whether or not it's going to fit the bust. Now, granted, this is drafted for a B cup, but you need to know where this is if you're going to insert additional bust darting or if you're going to reduce it. You need to know where this true bust point is. Where your true bust point is may be a different place. So what you would do is you would then trace this off and you would move this bust point to fit you, but you have to start out with where it is correctly. As a matter of fact, you can grade from this bust point. So I'm not going into all that, that's in my books, but first of all, we're just checking today to see whether or not this pattern is graded according to the grade rule. Because if there's a mistake in it, when you go to grade this to fit you, the same mistake is going to be in your pattern, and it's not going to fit you correctly. So this I had to do with whatever patterns I use with my students to make sure that they were graded to the grade, they were drafted to the grade rule, and I often found mistakes. So that's why I'm checking this one to see how it is. Now this is center front. Of course, they say to cut it on the fold, but of course we wouldn't do that. All right, and I'm going to lay this against the center front, and this is size 8 that I'm working with. So it's all color coordinated to make it easier. And here's size 8. Size 8 is blue. And I'm going to lay it against the size 8 blue line here. Right, first we do that. Then I want to find the size 8 underarm here. And that's up here. Now, it's not necessarily there. They may have changed the styling, so that may not work. All right, so this is way above their shoulder line, but their shoulder line may be lower, and it may be that they're bringing this over a bit. So we have to allow for styling there. All right, here is the actual sewing line across the shoulder. I'm going to lay this here, and the shoulder line is at a slightly different angle, but what I'm finding is that the true bust point is pretty much, see, here's the true bust point here where these two darts meet. So if I put this right on that point, and I have this lined up here, and then let's see how this is across the shoulder. This is a bit higher here, and it's coming down lower here. You have to allow for styling when you check these sort of things. And here it is with the armhole. They have a sleeve that goes down much further than the grade rule. The grade rule sloper would be tight. This would be, a sloper would be something that you could draft a swimsuit from or a bra from. So they've got the armhole lower. But it looks as if that this is okay. I'm going to bring this over so this line is right on the line here. And here we see that the true bust point is pretty much on the true bust point underneath. It's not quite the same, but it's off maybe a fraction of a 16th. And it may be that it's actually perfect. And it's when I lay this against this and I look at the blue line here, here it's crossing the blue line here, here it's coming up further. But of course, they may have this seam allowance go back a bit at the neck here. So it looks as if this pattern has been graded according to the grade rule. And here is the size 8 here. And I'm looking to see where the side seam is. And here's the side seam here. So it looks like it might be a little bit tight on the, let me get it exactly right. All right, but here is the size 8 side seam coming down here. So there's ease in here. So it looks as if this pattern has been graded according to the grade rule, which is a plus for vote. So I'm happy to say we've checked this pattern out, and it looks like this pattern is fine. And that it will, whatever changes need to be made to this, you don't need to change the pattern first in order to get it correct to the grade rule. It already is correct to the grade rule. Then whatever changes you need to make in the pattern that you have to make in all size 8s, you make to this, and it's going to fit correctly. All right, and that's as much as I have to say about grading right now. This is a complicated subject, but actually it's not that hard. If you work through it, you can learn to do it. Most of you who are watching my videos can learn to do these skills, and if you take the time to learn them, you'll find that sewing will be much more pleasurable. It really does feel good when you finish a garment that you really can't wait to wear it, that you feel comfortable in it, that it fits you and they look good when you wear it, and most of all, that nobody says to you, "Did you make it?" You don't want to hear that. That's not a compliment, people. They want to say, would you mind telling me where you buy your clothes? You have such nice clothes. All right, and when they ask you that, then you know you've hit the button that you want to hit. Okay, and that's bye for now. Thank you for watching.